Your college football game day has come early.
Goes down the field for Sicky, goes up high. He's got get away from the top speed, and the ball is free. Woo! What a hit! You got barbecue back there.
From underdog triumphs to powerhouse showdowns, we've got your winning playbook covered. It's BetQLU with Chris Mack, RJ Choppy, and John Martin, presented by BetMGM. The sports book born in Vegas. Download the app today. Please gamble responsibly.
And welcome in, friends. It is BetQLU, live coast to coast on the BetQL network. Wherever you may be in the world, we're right there with you inside your Odyssey app. It's free. Download it today, AUDACY. And, of course, you can always watch the show as well on the BetQL YouTube feed, which you find on the Odyssey Sports channel, alongside RJ Choppy and John Martin. I'm Chris Mack, and we are going to get you ready for Week 4 of the college football season. A slightly better slate than last week's. I think we can talk about it, and we will get into it with a trio of very interesting games, including one that's technically a Big Ten matchup, but has been played in the Rose Bowl before. We got a big one in the Big 12 and an SEC night game where maybe we find out if one team is as legit as the numbers say they are through the first 3 weeks of the season. But let's start there, the teams that are legit through the first couple weeks of the season, because we've got a new number one team in the country. The Longhorns have jumped to number one in the AP poll, first time in 16 years, following their blowout victory over UTSA. They did so without Quinn Ewers for much of the game. He left early with an oblique injury. Arch Manning comes on in and does really well. 9 of 12 for 223 yards, 4 TDs through the air, had a big rushing touchdown as well, 67 yards. No one's ever seen a Manning run that fast. And now all of a sudden, those of us that were questioning the Horns before the start of the season, Choppy, there's very little to question them about at this point, unless you think the Ewers absence is going to be long-term and cause bigger issues. But even that belief would be based on the fact that you don't think Arch Manning, who's had some time to get ready for this job, is quite ready for it. There's a reason Texas, RJ, is now third on the board at plus 550 to win the national title, behind only Georgia, who we'll get to in a second, and Ohio State.
They're a fantastic team. I mean, this is a year older team than went to the Final Four last year. Now, they lost a running back. Okay, a couple of them in camp this year that went down to injury, but they're still a tremendously talented team. And remember, this is now a flawed college football. This is the NFL. It's got there's no more Nick Sabans out there that are going to be rolling 5-star deep to 5-star deep to 5-star deep on the third string. If you're a 5-star, you're starting somewhere right away, or you're going to look for your ticket out and you're going to go get your NIL money. It's a really good team, and they are every bit as deserving of the number one ranking as Georgia would have been or Ohio State would have been. They just are. It's there's tiers here, and I do believe that they're on that top tier. Now, maybe if Michigan goes and gets destroyed by USC this weekend, and that kind of takes away some of the shine from their best loss, then maybe that does change things up. But as it stands right now, they're as good as it gets.
There's still a couple big games out there, John, for Texas. Obviously, they have Georgia visiting in Week 8. We'll get to that one. They still got the Red River rivalry the week before that game against Georgia. We'll get to Oklahoma a little bit later as well, but they're minus 550. You're paying $5.50 if you want to bet Texas to make the playoff. They feel very solidified in that spot as well. They should. And they're now the favorite to win the SEC as well at plus 210. Just your overall impressions of Texas, not just based on the UTSA game, obviously, but like Choppy said, they've got the win over Michigan. They've looked very impressive to this point, and it's hard to make an argument against them being the number one team in the country.
Agreed. I mean, especially when you consider how, for them, pedestrian Georgia looked last weekend against Kentucky. I realize that they always tend to struggle when they go up there, but I mean, everything is rolling for the Longhorns, and I think it's just, what Choppy said is right. I mean, they are a fantastic team, and I mean, I think everybody believed they would be good this year, but I don't know if people thought they would be rolling quite like this. I mean, they lost a lot to the draft. Yeah, they brought a lot back, but they lost not just Xavier Worthy, but we're talking defensive linemen, NFL guys, first round picks, and they just have reloaded. So yeah, I mean, I mean, we could argue about that Georgia game all day, and I'm sure when that time rolls around, we'll all make our cases for either team, and they're probably all fair. But it's September 19th, and we have what we have. And as of right now, I think they have properly been installed as the number one team in America.
Ewers and Texas is afforded this luxury, has a few weeks to get back to as close as 100% as possible if he wants to. They got Louisiana Monroe this weekend, Mississippi State next weekend, and then bye week going into, as I mentioned, the Red River rivalry in week 7 and the home game against Georgia on October 19th in week 8. Speaking of Georgia, and we're going to, this comparison, as long as both teams are right there at 1 and 2, is going to happen every week between now and a month from now, October 19th. Georgia did struggle. I joked last week that I went full Joe Namath and I didn't care about them struggling in the past up in Lexington. They struggled.
That's right. That's right.
And they barely get away, John, with a 13-12 victory. They don't cover the 21.5, obviously. It's not just that they got away with one. It's that they got outgained. It's that Kentucky really dictated the entire terms of the engagement to Georgia throughout the game. And the Bulldogs were really just lucky to get out of there alive. Carson Beck did not look all that great. Now, they're still Georgia. It's still Kirby Smart.
Yeah.
Dogs are still the favorites to win the national title at BetMGM at 325. But does this give us any more pause for concern with Georgia? Maybe not as, it's clearly still a playoff team, but, when we start to talk about who's going to win the SEC and get the bye into the second round of the playoffs, these two teams, again, that meet week 8 could be meeting again in the SEC title game, or if Georgia is to lose, maybe, I don't know, do you have to be undefeated to get into the SEC title game this year?
Yeah, I think in terms of, the way I would frame Georgia's, that they were absolutely, dominant against Clemson, but I think they were aided and abetted in both of the games that we're talking about, Clemson and Kentucky, by the opposing coaching staff. I mean, I think it's almost like these coaches come up against Georgia and they just wet themselves. And they're like, oh, it's big bad Georgia. Oh, I got a punt. I got a punt from that punt from Mark Stoops. Dabo was punting, in 4th and 1s with the game, definitely like getting away from him. And I think if I'm a Georgia fan right now, like eventually we're going to run into a team and a coaching staff that's not afraid of us, that actually has talent. And it's happening, certainly in that game against Texas for sure. And that's the part, like, where's the explosion on the perimeter from the receivers? Where's the, that run game that we're so used to from Georgia? It hasn't really showed up consistently this year yet.
It might happen week 5, Choppy, right? Like, they get the week off this week, Georgia, but then they got to go to Tuscaloosa. And that's a team, that's an environment that they're not going to live in their fears, to use a Mike Tomlinism here. They're not going to live in their fears against Georgia because they've faced them too many times in too many big games. Even if it was Saban and not Kalen DeBoer, that program as a whole is built to stare down the Bulldogs. And when it comes to those big moments, not pee down their leg.
Well, look, Georgia has 3 road games left. At Alabama, at Texas, at Ole Miss. I think a lot of this game it's the first road game of the year, first true road game of the year for them. Those are always a little bit squirrely for 18-year-old kids, 20-year-old kids. It just is. College football is a weird sport. And you're going to have one of these carnage Saturdays out there. Everybody knows it's going to happen. We don't know which week it is. It's going to happen where like 4 of the top 7 teams all lose to teams they have no business losing to. It's happened before. It'll happen again. But this was a weird game by Georgia, and it was an egg that they laid, and, part of, navigating college football or even the NFL is you've got to have your bad day against a team that really can't take advantage of it. And they did.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if they had that same kind of game against Texas or Alabama or Tennessee or Ole Miss, the other top teams they play, I don't know they survive. But it's Kentucky, So I think that we're gonna react to it because it's early in the season. We don't have a whole lot of data points, and it's the first real conference test they had. But the reality is that if they figure things out during this bye week, and then they go to Alabama and they win by 10, we're not going to even matter with this Kentucky game.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how the SEC maybe opens up when we get one of those losses or a few of those big losses that you were alluding to there. Texas, as we mentioned, the odds-on favorite right now to win the SEC at plus 210, Georgia 225, Bama 5-1, Ole Miss 7-1, all the way out to Tennessee, the Vols at 8-1, and we will get to their trip to Norman in just a couple of minutes. But one final time, and John, you're right, we're going to talk about this every week up to and including the week of the game. So what the hell? Let's start now because there are look-ahead lines posted at most of the major books on that October 19th, Week 8 game in Austin between the Dogs and the Horns. And it's anywhere from, you can get Texas laying 1.5 all the way out to Georgia laying 3 on the road in Austin, which is interesting to me that number is still out there. Just what makes sense to you right now as let's say they were playing this game tomorrow in Austin. Same scenario we'll be in a month. What should the number be?
Yeah, I would say it probably should be Texas -2. I think anything past that, you'd see Georgia bets, but I'd be interested in anything under that. Texas -2.5 probably be my last stop, and then I'd be interested in anything Georgia +3.5, +3. I think that's obviously it's that kind of a spread to me, but I will be on Texas if that's the number that I get. Texas +3. Can you text me where that's at off the air?
Yes,
because I would like to play that because again, my concerns with Georgia. And Choppy's right. It's a road conference game. I'm not trying to penalize them too much, but Texas went into the big house, and I know it's a down Michigan team that's but they just flat embarrassed those dudes, man. They went in there and they as 7-point favorites. They went into Michigan and they embarrassed those dudes, and as 21-point favorites, Georgia should have lost. If Kentucky has a halfway competent quarterback or offensive coach, they're losing that game. So I can't forget those things. I can't put those out of my mind. So I would be on anything Texas plus for sure. And then I would be interested up to -2.5. And then you start talking about maybe playing back Georgia a little bit past that.
I'm the same. Now, I guess the question is, who's the quarterback for Texas? If it's Arch, I'll take Georgia all day. It doesn't matter. But if it's Quinn, and he's healthy.
Assuming Quinn. I'm assuming
Quinn by then. Yeah, by then he's still got a month. I'm assuming Quinn, so I would take that. It's again they're a really solid team. Now, one thing is giving me pause here. So there are NFL scouts who we deal with who say that this Georgia team is as good or better talent-wise than some of the ones that we've had over the last couple of years. So, for the overall talent, now is Beck as good of a leader as Stetson was in those moments? And that could play a role. And Georgia obviously had some really good pass catchers. They don't have Brock Bowers anymore. They don't have McConkey anymore. They had some good pass catchers that they could find ways to get open. But overall, the team, especially in the trenches, this is a really solid team that I think just about any other team in the nation would trade their roster for.
Feels like this is another situation where we could get one result in the regular season, and we're highly likely to get a rematch in a conference championship game where we may get the thing flipped on its head. And who knows, maybe it doesn't necessarily mean that the better team is winning the conference title and getting the bye to the second week of the playoff. Maybe it means the better team loses the conference championship game And maybe gets what I think a lot of teams are going to end up not having a problem with. A home game on campus. Yeah, you're going to have to win an extra game to get to the national championship, but a home game on campus, there's a whole lot of donors and a whole lot of people with big fat pockets who are going to absolutely love that idea. We got another game just like that, where it could be a regular season preview of a possible conference championship and a major line movement on that game in the last couple of days because of quarterback health. We'll touch on that. Also, Tennessee getting a chance to prove that they are more than just, well, some subpar opponents that they've absolutely beaten into the dirt at this point. And the first official Big Ten game for the University of Southern California visiting the aforementioned Wolverines. We get into all three of those games next, right here on BetQLU.
You've been listening to BetQLU, presented by BetMGM. If you missed any of the show, listen back anytime on the new and improved Odyssey app.
Are you ready, sir? Start your engines. Let's go.
Astros money line versus the Marlins. Johnny Cueto, no thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness. How does this affect me personally?
Which is absolutely bonkers to me.
If you do the middle school math, is 117 yards per game that you gotta post each and every weekend.
I knew it.
Who has the upper hand? Do we think it's going to be the offenses, or do we think it's going to be the defenses?
How about Saturday's game? Let's just throw a random game out here.
Like, I don't want to put faith in NC State. There's a chance we'll lose
team.
outright. Who knows? Jinx is definitely not paying attention right now. He's just vibing to the music.
Are you ready for the most interactive sports gambling show? Introducing BetQL's Send It In with PJ Glasser. We want to hear from you. Send It In is about your picks, your trends, and your fades. Share your thoughts, predictions, and your best daily best bets with the Send It In community. Set your reminders, mark your calendars, and get ready to send it in on weekday afternoons at 1 Eastern on Twitter, YouTube, and Twitch. On your home for wagertainment, the BetQL Network, presented by BetMGM.
Go for the betting cycle on BetQL with Cody Decker,
Cody Decker, former professional baseball player, turned professional smartass on the radio.
sports handicapper Rob Brown,
When Penix Jr. plays USC, he's getting 400 yards.
cycling all the top plays,
And Cody Decker, I think Florida can cover today.
and one outrageous show parlay.
1, 2, 3.
Let the chaos begin. It's Bet for the Cycle on the BetQL Network, presented by BetMGM.
Some would say that maybe he'll be chasing Super Bowl MVP. Really makes me angry that, like, Knicks fans can't have anything. We've been bad for... I get it. Now it's, okay, 100% of attention on 9 million games tonight. It's a playoff game. We've seen this movie before, and we know how it ends. And it ends with absolute disaster. But I'll tell you, that's fun. But the most fun thing about betting on sports for me is this. Like, hey, there's no tomorrow. And now, come on, put Pickett in.
Are you ready, sir? Start your engines. Let's go.
Astros money line versus the Marlins. Johnny Cueto, no thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness. How does this affect me personally?
Which is absolutely bonkers to me.
If you do the middle school math, is 117 yards per game that you gotta post each and every weekend.
I knew it.
Who has the upper hand? Do we think it's going to be the offenses, or do we think it's going to be the defenses?
How about Saturday's game? Let's just throw a random game out here.
Like, I don't want to put faith in NC State. There's a chance we'll lose
team.
outright. Who knows? Jinx is definitely not paying attention right now. He's just vibing to the music.
Are you ready for the most interactive sports gambling show? Introducing BetQL's Send It In with PJ Glasser. We want to hear from you. Send It In is about your picks, your trends, and your fades. Share your thoughts, predictions, and your best daily best bets with the Send It In community. Set your reminders, mark your calendars, and get ready to send it in on weekday afternoons at 1 Eastern on Twitter, YouTube, and Twitch. On your home for wagertainment, the BetQL Network, presented by BetMGM.
Some would say that maybe he'll be chasing Super Bowl MVP. Really makes me angry that Knicks fans can't have anything. We've been bad for. I get it. Now it's okay. 100% of attention on 9 million games tonight. It's a playoff game. We've seen this movie before, and we know how it ends, and it ends with absolute disaster.
But I'll tell you, that's fun. But the most fun thing about betting on sports for me is this.
Hey, there's no tomorrow. And now, come on, put Pickett in.
Let's get back to BetQLU, presented by BetMGM.
It is BetQLU, live coast to coast on the BetQL network, presented by BetMGM, the sportsbook born in Vegas. Alongside John Martin and RJ Choppy, I'm Chris Mack. You can also watch the show every weekend right there on YouTube on the Odyssey Sports channel. And, of course, we're always available in podcast form as well. So be sure to like and follow and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts to BetQLU. We take another look at the Heisman market now that we've got some quarterbacks doing different things, and injury, as we just got done talking about, to Quinn Ewers. That has certainly affected the Heisman market. Our best bets before we wrap up in a couple moments as well. And 3 big games this weekend, week 4 of the college football season to talk about. A homecoming in the case for one coach who maybe has some things to prove, a possible regular season preview of an eventual conference championship game that's also got a quarterback injury or injuries to deal with. We'll get to those 2 games, but let's start in Ann Arbor and a 5.5-point spread on USC Michigan. I don't think any of us, would have expected this 4 weeks ago before the season started. If we would have expected 5.5 points, it would have been the other way probably. But Michigan has been just bad. This thing opened at 6.5, has come down to 5.5. There are still some 6s out there. USC has not played a game with a total in the 40s, by the way, guys, since pre-pandemic. And the total on this one, 46.5. The D'Anton Lynn defense has definitely caught some people's attention. And, of course, Michigan's offense has as well for less fantastic reasons. They've now had to make a quarterback switch. Davis Warren out, Alex Orji in, as they're averaging only 329 yards per game, John. That's the second worst in the Big Ten. You got the Trojans coming off a bye and a hot start. Their defense has allowed only 20 points in these first 2 games. I mentioned that. And, by the way, it looks like they found themselves a quarterback. If this thing got out past 6, I think I would start to worry about it. But I think if it stays under 6, especially if I'm still getting 5.5, I don't have a problem laying that with the Trojans, even on the road in what amounts to their first official Big Ten contest.
Yeah, this is a huge adjustment. I mean, it was Michigan minus 10 in the summer when these lines were posted for the first time. I guess that would have technically maybe been spring, maybe summer, depending on when you believe summer starts. I'm not going to sit here and argue with you guys about it. But obviously a massive adjustment. Yeah, so it would have been summer then. And I agree. As a Memphian, it gets to 90 in early May. So that's when summer starts. But yeah, listen, I mean, it's hard to argue with it. I mean, Michigan sucks. They can't score. They look unimaginative. They seem to not have any answers at quarterback. And look, RJ is probably the best option that they have just in terms of a different look. But the defense with USC is at least a little better, which is, enough. And we know what they can do on offense. I mean, Miller Moss looks like the real deal. So I don't know if I would necessarily want to play the under here, just because I'm not really convinced how much improved this USC defense is. I mean, that LSU game was definitely funky. It should have been much more high scoring than it actually was when you just average out yards per play. A couple of fluky things happen. But I just don't see Michigan really being able to do enough here to keep this within the number. I just am not a believer whatsoever in what they're doing. And I would be comfortable with USC in this spot.
Man, all is right in the world. Michigan is back to being boring. And all is right. The only thing they need to do now is get rid of that turf, bring back that 5-inch grass where you lose the players' shoes. And, everybody runs very slow. It's a very Northwestern look. It's all they got to do now, man. It's fantastic. All is right in the world. But, yeah, it's all joking aside. I think what happens, and this you'll see this throughout sports, you see something for a couple of years now, and it becomes that's the norm, and then we're slow. We're slow to correct, and we're slow to correct on Michigan. You lose Jim Harbaugh, you lose Connor Stallions, but then you lose your quarterback, and you lose your running back, and you lose a lot of players, and every year Michigan was getting guys drafted, and the way the transfer portal is now, you don't build programs, you restock, and all it takes is one class where you miss. And you could see this in any sport. You can see this in college basketball. Happens all the time. You get a couple of recruits in there that are transfers, and they don't play together. John, you know this. Yep, they don't play together very well. And all of a sudden, you're looking up, and you're a 500 team. 6 weeks into the season, and that can happen real fast here.
Yeah, it could get ugly real fast for Michigan, as if this isn't ugly enough. But yeah, they might be ripping the turf out and planting the real deep grass by the end of the season if things continue to go this way. The only time they've gone over in their 3 games this year, or their game has gone over, I should say, is that beating they took at the hands of Texas, which was 43 on the total and just 1 point over the posted 42. So maybe under is the look. It's again, I think you make a good point, John. We don't know. We have yet to see this USC defense do it against a legitimate opponent. I guess maybe then the next, counterpoint
we may not see that this week either.
right. So maybe the under is still in play for some of you.
Yeah.
Let's pivot to one that's got a much larger total, 54.5, because it's the Big 12, right? And the Big 12 is supposed to have big fat totals. 4 Eastern, 3 Central kick on Saturday afternoon. Oklahoma State hosting the Utes, and major line movement on this thing Thursday morning. Wednesday night into Thursday morning. Went from Utah by 2.5 to Oklahoma State by 2.5 at home now, because it sounds like Cam Rising is more and more doubtful for this thing by the moment. That being said, I was ready to jump on Oklahoma State in this game before any Cam Rising injury news, guys. They haven't allowed a sack yet this season, the Cowboys. They got a veteran offensive line. I know Ollie Gordon hasn't looked great yet, but Alan Bowman has looked pretty good. 2 experienced, we could call them veterans, I guess, as old as they are, veteran quarterbacks. Bowman has stayed clean in the pocket, and Cam Rising is once again fighting injury issues. So I was on Oklahoma State getting 2.5 at home. I'm okay to flip to the other side in this instance, Choppy. I'll lay 2.5. If it gets out to 3, maybe I'll pump the brakes. But right now, laying 2.5, give me Oklahoma State at home.
Yeah, I think Oklahoma State would be the play there if Cam's out. I like the over in this game. I just, it seems like every Oklahoma State game is 34-31. And I know it's not, but I can't get that out of my head. So I would probably be more inclined on betting the over. The money line, I don't think there's enough benefit there to play in the money line at all. So I'd probably stay away from that. But yeah, I would probably lean Oklahoma State depending on the injuries. But I like the over in this game regardless, especially if both teams' quarterbacks healthy.
John?
Yeah, I agree. But it's all dependent on Cam. If no Cam, I want nothing to do with it. I actually do have. So the way this worked, I had Utah plus 2.5, and then I saw the movement on, like you said, Wednesday night, and it was just so strong and profound that with no reported news, right? Somebody somewhere has some information. I mean, we just know how these things go. And Cam Rising specifically, I mean, we think about that Florida opener last year, where there was some misdirection from Whittingham. He consistently lies, or if we want to be nice, he holds his cards close when it comes to Cam's injury status. And there's talk of it not being just the finger now. There's talk of it also being a knee. So I had 2.5. I played 2.5 back the other way just to kind of ditch it. If Rising is ruled in, I mean, obviously it won't be plus 2.5 for Utah anymore. It'll probably go back to -1, -1.5. I think I might get involved there, but at this point, I just don't know how you can play anything on this game without having a really clear idea of Cam Rising's availability. He did do some radio this week on Thursday, but again, Whittingham has a history with this stuff. So even as he sounds like somebody who is going to play, I think if you don't have anything on this game yet, you're better off just waiting until game day.
Again, one that probably gives us, at least in my opinion, a sneak preview of what the conference championship game could look like, although Kansas and Kansas State are certainly hoping to be a part of that discussion later in the fall. Saturday night, primetime in Norman. Oklahoma hosting Tennessee for the Sooners' first ever game as an SEC team. Spread is at 7, but if you like the Sooners, you can get 7.5 in a few spots. Josh Heupel, I don't know. He tried really nice to be, cool with everything this week when he was talking to the media. But Josh Heupel revenge game, maybe, after being kicked to the curb by Stoops and the Sooners a few years ago. And then you've got the Vols, who've just been utterly dominant. 191-13, they've outscored their 3 opponents. But here's the problem. The 3 opponents are NC State, okay, and then Chattanooga and Kent State. It's the highest point differential through the first 3 games of any SEC team's schedule in history. Plus, the yards per game is ridiculous, like 639 to 161. But now we all wonder, John, is it just because the opponent, or is Nico for real? Dylan Sampson's tied for the lead in the country with 9 rushing touchdowns as well. Or can the Sooners do enough to slow this thing down to where they can somehow outscore Tennessee?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's all kind of priced in here, right? I mean, -7 on the road in the conference opener in the SEC at Oklahoma is absolutely outrageous. I mean, it's an outrageous number. I'm not saying that Tennessee doesn't deserve that, and I'm not saying that Oklahoma doesn't deserve to be a 7-point home dog. But, I mean, just on its face, the idea that Oklahoma is a 7-point dog in Norman to a conference opponent is just it's kind of insane. So it's all priced in. I mean, I don't necessarily know what to make of this one. I've been as impressed as I've been with Tennessee, I've been underwhelmed by Oklahoma. But the reality is we know what that scene is going to be. This is Nico's first true road game. It's the conference opener. And the stuff that, was working for you against Kent State. And I mean, all those teams are horrible. I mean, all of them, NC State included. I mean, even when Grayson was in there, they were a joke. So it's hard to be able to extrapolate anything. As much as I do believe in the offense long term, we know what Josh can do with a very accurate quarterback. Hendon Hooker was among the best quarterbacks in the country, 2 years ago. So I'm not acting like it's not potentially real, but asking me to lay 7, in Norman, I mean, can it win? Sure. I don't want anything to do with it.
This is an interesting one because this is the largest home dog Oklahoma's been since '98. Stoops got there in '99. I think that was the John Blake era, very forgettable era of Oklahoma football. And this is uncharted territory for them. And I think a lot of it is the perception that, listen, let's be fair. They played a Houston team and they barely beat them. And that Houston team lost by 3 scores to UNLV. I mean, and now it's great. Again, it's one game, but it was a home game. It was a home game, right? And then Houston lost that game at home to UNLV by 20.
And it took them 55 minutes to put away Tulane, too.
Yeah. So, and they are definitely, they're not going up one weight class here. They're going up a couple. And Josh Heupel's kind of proven that if he has an accurate quarterback, they roll out of bed and score 40. That's just kind of how it works. This thing I could absolutely see, because it's Nico's first road game, I could absolutely see him having a terrible first half and struggling. But I could also see this thing ending up like that Tennessee LSU game did a couple years ago, where you look up and it's 42-14. And I totally could see that one. What I did with this game is I got it at the 7 points was minus 120. I didn't want to lay it, so I actually played it at 7.5 or even. So I figure if Tennessee's going to win by 7, they're going to win by enough to cover that. I do think they're the better team. I think they absolutely should be favored. It's a big number. It's a big road number for your first road game as the quarterback. And you're right. I mean, they haven't played anybody, and NC State is not. They're nothing. I mean, they were overrated to begin with, and it shows in the Clemson line that they have now.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. We can look at Tennessee and say, who have they played? And it's absolutely a very accurate question and criticism to ask. I look at it from this perspective when I try to ask myself, okay, how do I handicap this game, given everything that we've laid out about both teams to this point? It's if Oklahoma plays a perfect defensive game, what does it limit Tennessee to on the scoreboard? And I think to your point, Choppy, about the quarterback and this offense that Tennessee has, it's not just quarterback. I mentioned the running game earlier as well. I think if Oklahoma has a fantastic defensive game, they're not holding Tennessee to any less than 24. I say that with a big fat question mark after it. And I can't see this Oklahoma team scoring better than 24 on Tennessee's defense. And overall, I just don't trust Brett Venables in this spot. I do trust Josh Heupel to have his guys ready. I think a lot of them will be motivated. Like I said, Josh Heupel revenge game angle maybe to come in. So I'm going to lay the 7, cross my fingers, and hope it works out. We talk Heisman Trophy market and how it's adjusted since Quinn Ewers' injury. That's next right here on BetQLU.
You've been listening to BetQLU, presented by BetMGM. If you missed any of the show, listen back anytime on the new and improved Odyssey app.
Are you ready, sir? Start your engines. Let's go.
Astros money line versus the Marlins. Johnny Cueto, no thank you. Yeah.
Oh, my goodness. How does this affect me personally?
Which is absolutely bonkers to me.
If you do the middle school math, is 117 yards per game that you gotta post each and every weekend.
I knew it.
Who has the upper hand? Do we think it's going to be the offenses, or do we think it's going to be the defenses?
How about Saturday's game? Let's just throw a random game out here.
Like, I don't want to put faith in NC State. There's a chance we'll lose outright. Who knows? Jinx is definitely not paying attention right now. He's just vibing to the music.
Are you ready for the most interactive sports gambling show? Introducing BetQL's Send It In with PJ Glasser. We want to hear from you. Send It In is about your picks, your trends, and your fades. Share your thoughts, predictions, and your best daily best bets with the Send It In community. Set your reminders, mark your calendars, and get ready to send it in on weekday afternoons at 1 Eastern on Twitter, YouTube, and Twitch. On your home for wagertainment, the BetQL Network, presented by BetMGM.
Go for the betting cycle on BetQL with Cody Decker.
Cody Decker, former professional baseball player, turned professional smartass on the radio.
Sports handicapper Rob Brown.
When Penix Jr. plays USC, he's getting 400 yards.
Cycling all the top plays.
And Cody Decker, I think Florida can cover today.
And one outrageous show parlay.
1, 2, 3. Oh!
Let the chaos begin. It's Bet for the Cycle on the BetQL Network, presented by BetMGM.
Some would say that maybe he'll be chasing Super Bowl MVP. Really makes me angry that like Knicks fans can't have anything. We've been bad for. I get it. Now it's okay. 100% of attention on 9 million games tonight. It's a playoff game. We've seen this movie before, and we know how it ends, and it ends with absolute disaster.
But I'll tell you, that's fun. But the most fun thing about betting on sports for me is this.
Like, hey, there's no tomorrow. And now, come on, put pick it in.
Are you ready, sir? Start your engines. Let's go.
Astros money line versus the Marlins. Johnny Cueto, no thank you. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. How does this affect me personally?
Which is absolutely bonkers to me.
If you do the middle school math, is 117 yards per game that you gotta post each and every weekend.
I knew it.
Who has the upper hand? Do we think it's going to be the offenses, or do we think it's going to be the defenses?
How about Saturday's game? Let's just throw a random game out here.
Like, I don't want to put faith in NC State. There's a chance we'll lose outright. Who knows? Jinx is definitely not paying attention right now. He's just vibing to the music.
Are you ready for the most interactive sports gambling show? Introducing BetQL's Send It In with PJ Glasser. We want to hear from you. Send It In is about your picks, your trends, and your fades. Share your thoughts, predictions, and your best daily best bets with the Send It In community. Set your reminders, mark your calendars, and get ready to send it in on weekday afternoons at 1 Eastern on Twitter, YouTube, and Twitch. On your home for wagertainment, the BetQL Network, presented by BetMGM.
Some would say that maybe he'll be chasing Super Bowl MVP. Really makes me angry that like Knicks fans can't have anything. We've been bad for. I get it. Now it's okay. 100% of attention on 9 million games tonight. It's a playoff game. We've seen this movie before, and we know how it ends, and it ends with absolute disaster.
But I'll tell you, that's fun. But the most fun thing about betting on sports for me is this.
Like, hey, there's no tomorrow. And now, come on, put pick it in.
Let's get back to BetQLU, presented by BetMGM.
Live coast to coast on the BetQL network. It is BetQLU alongside RJ Choppy and John Martin. I'm Chris Mack. We are live every single Friday night, Saturday morning for you, getting you ready, in this case, for week 4 of the college football slate. And also taking a look in just a moment at the adjustments made to the Heisman market, given what we've seen in the first 3 weeks, including an injury to the guy who was the front runner a week ago, the Longhorns' Quinn Ewers. Don't forget, you can also take us with you wherever you're going inside your Odyssey app, AUDACY. It's free. Download it today. And you can always get us in podcast form as well, wherever you get your podcasts. Just search for BetQLU, presented by BetMGM, the sportsbook born in Vegas. So Quinn Ewers, guys, all the way down to 20-1 in some spots. You can find it as low as 14-1. I see a 16 as well, but 15 to 20-1. That price range now after the injury. Let's start here, John. Is Ewers completely out of the Heisman race if he misses more than, say, 2 weeks?
Probably. If it's more than 2 weeks. I mean, he's already missed basically, it'd be 1.5 here for sure. If he misses 2.5, I do think that's probably going to be too much to overcome. And the reason why is just because, I mean, you look at these quarterbacks that are, in front of him right now. I mean, they're not slowing down, right? And they're all in just ridiculous offenses. I think a guy like Jackson Dart at 7-1 is really tempting because he's going to, Lane is going to absolutely, and I guess honestly, you make the same argument about Nico. Both those guys are in offenses that are going to just look to put up as many points as possible. They're not going to slow down. And both those teams are going to have a chance to be in the playoff and could be live to win it all. I mean, you got to say that. So, I think that's what Quinn is up against. I mean, there's just too many high octane offenses and coaches that are kind of motivated, to keep the foot on the pedal here in Josh and in Lane.
Man, that's a good point about the coaches, like you said, like Lane and Josh, that are just gonna. I mean, they coach petty. I mean, they do. They coach petty, and I love that. I mean, dude did an onside kick last week. Heupel did an onside kick of 30. Like, what are we doing here? Way to show your cards.
And Sarkisian
there,
does not, by the way. Sarkisian,
No.
I think they have the biggest drop off and run pass to run when they get a big lead in college football.
But I will say this. The only one that is like Quinn Ewers at 20-1 is too. You have to bet it, right? Even if you think he's going to miss 2 games, like that's too good of an odd. You kind of have to. Like that you're not going to get better value than that. And I'm not saying you would bet it at the same rate in terms of the money that you would put on, say, a dart. But, I mean, you've got to throw something on there. 20-1 is just too much value. And we know, Texas gets a lot of play, a lot of conversation nationally. They're going to be in the playoff. They're probably going to be the number 1 team if they beat Georgia. Like, if he beats Georgia on the 19th and he puts up a really good game, like, he may lock that thing up there. Because someone's going to stumble. Dart's going to stumble. Nico's going to have his games. It's only going to take 1 loss by Cam Ward for them to throw Miami out because he doesn't play in the SEC or the Big Ten. I mean, it's tough to say that you wouldn't want to put a little bit of cash on 20-1 with the Heisman favorite a week ago.
So how ridiculous is it then, Choppy, in your opinion, that Arch is right there at the same price most places?
Oh, I think if Arch's last name was Smith, he wouldn't be at 16-1.
150.
I don't think it would. I just don't see. I don't see that to be the option right there. He's a good player. All right, there's no doubt about that. He's electric. He's got a good arm. He's got great speed, and he'll probably be the Heisman favorite next year. Or one of the two.
He's a backup quarterback. What are we talking about?
Man. What are we doing?
He's a backup quarterback, bro. That's insane. It's insane.
We can't have this.
If you bet Arch Manning 16-1, DM me. I'll help. I promise. I will help you. I'll help you become a better. If you're one of those. Yeah, I'll help you. But we're starting from ground zero.
Yeah. Yeah, no, there's a lot of structure that needs to be put in place. That's like a life coach kind of deal, John. Like that's a time commitment.
Absolutely right.
If you're taking the Arch Manning bettors under your wing. Another name I was going to throw out because part of me wants to say he's out of this race now, but the numbers he's put up are ridiculous. Even though his team has looked half interested at times, and that's Dylan Gabriel. Like. It's still 10-1 in spots, 9-1 most markets. Like you look at Oregon, there's not a lot impressive left on the schedule other than the Ohio State game, right? So he's got to keep putting up these ridiculous numbers, and I think they got to beat Ohio State. If those two things don't happen, if both of those things happen, I think you got a legit Heisman candidate who drops back down into that, 6-ish, 7-1-ish range. But right now, just the way Oregon has played, I don't know if it necessarily matters, John, that his individual numbers are great.
If that team turns it up and Lanning is very similar, right? We're talking about Lane Kiffin and Josh Heupel. He's very similar. Like he's the guy that wants to put up basketball scores. So if they can turn it up here, and you finally kind of started to see that last week against Oregon State, if they can start to turn it up in Big Ten play and he's at the heart of it, I think there's really no separation between the argument that we just made for Nico and Dart. And, we haven't even really talked about Milroe's chances, but I guess that's because we're probably more skeptical on Alabama, running the table in that same way. So, he's very live if all that happens.
Yeah, and I do think, look, he's not going to win it but I do think it's interesting to keep an eye on just how much yardage Ashton Genty continues to put up at Boise. They've only played 2 games, and he's right there leading the country in rushing, right there behind the leader. He's leading in yards per carry, I believe. He's like 10 yards per carry. It's ridiculous. And again, they've only played 2 games. But here's the thing. Boise has to run the table, and even then, I don't think a running back Genty would have to put up 10 yards per carry all year long, 15, 20 carries. I mean, he'd have to have an otherworldly season. Boise go undefeated. And even then, I don't know if he's winning it over one of these SEC quarterbacks.
Will we see a non-quarterback win in the next 10 years?
It's
Devontae
hard
the last one?
Yes.
Is he the last one that wasn't a quarterback to win?
Yeah. It's hard for me to see a running back even like getting back into it. Like getting the invite, I think, has to be looked at. Like getting the invite to New York has to be looked at as some level of success for a running back at this point.
What a time to be alive, man. It's like there was a time where quarterbacks didn't win it. Like you had to be a running back to win it. And
that's true.
you know, and now it's like you just had to be a quarterback.
Man, I will say this though: running backs are coming back in a big way in the NFL.
They are.
They were phased out. They were phased out, and now, passing touchdowns are the lowest they've been through 2 weeks in the NFL since 2019, 2018. So it might start to be cool to be a running back again here soon.
Yeah. I would keep an eye on that, and I think it's part of a much larger conversation we don't have time to have here tonight, but like just the transition of NFL offenses. We're used to the last couple phases of innovation in football coming from college and bubbling their way up to the NFL level. We might be seeing that working in reverse this time because of the way defenses are playing. If we get another decline in points across the league in the NFL this year, it'd be the first time they've done that in 4 consecutive years, I think, since the late 70s, early 80s. You will see some major changes, especially given the way quarterbacks have disappointed. I'm looking at you, Bryce Young, who've had a lot of capital invested in them. But like I said, a much larger conversation.
I mean, I got to say, that is just really rich coming from a guy that lives in Pittsburgh. Like, you have any room whatsoever to talk about offense. I mean,
I don't. I've seen it firsthand for the last 3 years why quarterbacks are being phased out is important if they're not elite level throwers. You know what I mean? I'm looking at Justin Fields and Russ.
Up there.
We got Arthur Smith as the damn OC. I mean, we got 9 tight ends on the field at once, John. Believe me, I know ugly offense when I see it. Anyway, let's get to our best bets. Choppy, get us started. What do you got?
You know what? I'm going to take South Florida plus the 17 against Miami. It's in Tampa. It's not going to rain. You know, that Alabama game had that rain. You can always bet on a good rainstorm coming through the Tampa area at some point. But that looked like it's going to rain. But a couple of things here. One, that Alabama score when they played them on the road at Tuscaloosa, that was not indicative of the game. That was a 14-13 game going into the fourth quarter. And Bama rolled up on them 28-3. That was a much tighter game. And I don't know, like, is Miami a better team than Alabama? I think they were playing, they were going to play. Bama was probably favored. So, that, and then look, this is their Super Bowl for South Florida. It just is. And these night games that are non-conference where you've got like a small school where everybody sets up student tickets, breaking records and everything. It's got one of those weird. I have a weird feeling about this game. It's like it's opposite of the OU Tennessee game, so it's not going to get a ton of national play. And then all of a sudden, you're going to look up and it's 21-17 with 8 minutes to go.
So Choppy's got USF plus the 17. John, you got like 20 seconds. What you got?
Navy plus 9.5. Speaking of the triple option. I think a little bit of a letdown for Memphis after that Florida State win. And Navy's pretty much the worst team you could ever hope to play after a huge win like that because you have to be disciplined. So I like the points here, plus 9.5, Navy.
I'm glad John kind of brought up the Lane Kiffin argument earlier. I don't have to lay it out again. Ole Miss is going to roll Georgia Southern just like they've done their first three opponents. They're laying 36. They'll cover. That'll be my best bet for this week as well. A reminder, you can always get us on demand if you missed us live inside your Odyssey app or wherever you get your podcast. Just search BetQLU, presented by BetMGM.
You've been listening to BetQLU, presented by BetMGM. If you missed any of the show, listen back anytime on the new and improved Odyssey app.
Are you ready, sir? Start your engines. Let's go.
Astros money line versus the Marlins. Johnny Cueto, no thank you. Yeah.
Oh, my goodness. How does this affect me personally?
Which is absolutely bonkers to me.
If you do the middle school math, is 117 yards per game that you gotta post each and every weekend.
I knew it.
Who has the upper hand? Do we think it's going to be the offenses or do we think it's going to be the defenses?
How about Saturday's game? Let's just throw a random game out here.
Like, I don't want to put faith in NC State. There's a chance we'll lose outright. Who knows? Jinx is definitely not paying attention right now. He's just vibing to the music.
Are you ready for the most interactive sports gambling show? Introducing BetQL's Send It In with PJ Glasser. We want to hear from you. Send It In is about your picks, your trends, and your fades. Share your thoughts, predictions, and your best daily best bets with the Send It In community. Set your reminders, mark your calendars, and get ready to send it in on weekday afternoons at 1 Eastern on Twitter, YouTube, and Twitch. On your home for wagertainment, the BetQL Network, presented by BetMGM.
Go for the betting cycle on BetQL with Cody Decker.
Cody Decker, former professional baseball player, turned professional smartass on the radio.
Sports handicapper Rob Brown.
When Penix Jr. plays USC, he's getting 400 yards.
Cycling all the top plays.
And Cody Decker, I think Florida can cover today.
And one outrageous show parlay.
1, 2, 3. Oh!
Let the chaos begin. It's Bet for the Cycle on the BetQL Network, presented by BetMGM.
Some would say that maybe he'll be chasing Super Bowl MVP. Really makes me angry that, like, Knicks fans can't have anything. We've been bad for... I get it. Now it's, okay, 100% of attention on 9 million games tonight. It's a playoff game. We've seen this movie before, and we know how it ends. And it ends with absolute disaster.
But I'll tell you, that's fun. But the most fun thing about betting on sports for me is this.
Like, hey, there's no tomorrow. And now, come on, put Pickett in.
Are you ready, sir? Start your engines. Let's go.
Astros money line versus the Marlins. Johnny Cueto, no thank you. Yeah.
Oh, my goodness. How does this affect me personally?
Which is absolutely bonkers to me.
If you do the middle school math, is 117 yards per game that you gotta post each and every weekend.
I knew it.
Who has the upper hand? Do we think it's going to be the offenses or do we think it's going to be the defenses?
How about Saturday's game? Let's just throw a random game out here.
Like, I don't want to put faith in NC State. There's a chance we'll lose outright. Who knows? Jinx is definitely not paying attention right now. He's just vibing to the music.
Are you ready for the most interactive sports gambling show? Introducing BetQL's Send It In with PJ Glasser. We want to hear from you. Send It In is about your picks, your trends, and your fades. Share your thoughts, predictions, and your best daily best bets with the Send It In community. Set your reminders, mark your calendars, and get ready to send it in on weekday afternoons at 1 Eastern on Twitter, YouTube, and Twitch. On your home for wagertainment, the BetQL Network, presented by BetMGM.
Some would say that maybe he'll be chasing Super Bowl MVP. Really makes me angry that, like, Knicks fans can't have anything. We've been bad for... I get it. Now it's,